this is Councillor Graham Campbell. I'm the co-convener of SNP Socialists, and I am at the Campaign Nerve Centre of our local MPs, well, not MP, normal person's campaign rooms. And I'm speaking with my co-convener, Janis Wilson. How are you doing, Janis?
I'm speaking from the creche room at work.
Hey, there's the multi-purpose multitasking. Hey, this is digital socialism for the 21st century. Well, nothing much happened this week either, really. Only a couple of leaders' debates, one with 7, one with 2. And then we've got Douglas Ross resigning. We've got the Keir Starmer showing himself to be the elf that he is. And we've got a narrowing of the polls. So what do you make of that?
Honestly, I haven't paid a great deal of attention to the news this week, so apologies for that. I've been up to my personal stuff, but did catch a bit about Labour's manifesto, which was a lot of promises about nothing. And I saw that Reform have overtaken the Conservatives.
Well, that was the big news.
And, it's a bit of a short, yeah.
An SH1T show, yes.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, obviously, it's because Nigel Farage has been on the telly every day for the last 2 weeks. The BBC seems to be doing their very best to promote his nonsense. But his constant theme is to blame the population rise for all the things that are wrong with austerity. We've not got enough housing because governments are not building enough housing. We've not got control of rents because governments don't control rents, and they're not building enough social housing because they're not stopping the sell-off of social housing in England. That's why we've got housing shortage, and but this trust smashed the economy and made mortgage rates go up. So all that's known. And his answer is blame immigrants. That's all it's constant. And that's getting airtime, and it's getting too much airtime. And surprise, surprise, Reform are up. I guarantee you, though, that when they stop putting Farage on every day, their numbers will go back down again. But I think, unfortunately, this is where we're at. They're going to have more daily Farage.
Well,
Farage.
Yeah, just look at Europe, at the right wing sweeping across Europe. Of course, it's going to have an effect here as well. And when people are desperate, they can't afford food, they can't afford heating, they need a scapegoat, and along comes Mr. Farage with his racism and bigotry and intolerance, and it's depressing.
Well, his stick is basically, England's full up, we've had too many people come. But of course, here we are in Scotland. We're a country that's got a declining working age population. We need more people to come, not less. And of course, our debate on this question of migration is very different. It's great to see Stephen Flynn putting it out there and shaming Labour and the Lib Dems and all the rest of them into standing by principles they used to agree with. Indeed, Keir Starmer had made that statement about migration in 2020. He wouldn't be making that now because he wants to get in power with Tory votes. And it's pretty clear that that Labour's not going to change very much. And that message has been coming across in the debates. And it's interesting that the polls are narrowing. The SNP are now level with Labour, Labour having had a lead in Scotland. We're now level. And I think that's partly down to John Swinney's credibility. That's partly down to Stephen's good points on exposing their hypocrisy over the £18 billion of cuts that both parties down the south are going to bring in, whoever the government, but it be Starmer. But £18 billion black hole in the finances. They're not saying how they're going to plug that gap. And if they're not plugging it, that's the equivalent of £1.8 billion more cuts to the Scottish government budget, that, on top of what we already had as 14 years of Tory austerity. So it's pretty clear Starmer's not offering to change very much. And it was interesting just how poor Angela Rayner was in those debates. I mean, she was really poor. And the Tories' answer was, Labour are going to raise your taxes, having raised them to the highest level in 70 years. They've had no sense of irony or shame or self-evaluation there. And we've also had Douglas Ross, another gift that keeps on giving. He's decided that he's only going to have 2 jobs now rather than 3. What do you think?
And the police have decided not to investigate him.
Really?
Yeah.
I missed that one.
Yeah, I'm almost certain. I mean, have a quick Google. But I'm almost certain that I read that somewhere because his wife is a police officer.
Hey?
That's what I read.
Wow.
I stand corrected, but as far as I know, the police aren't going to take any action.
Now, funny how there was not a media furore over the thousands and tens of thousands of pounds he's taken out of public money, which he probably should not have done. And there's no media circus around that. And they're not even asking him about that. And perhaps partly it's because he's resigned as leader. Maybe that's because don't want to kick a man when he's already down. But he's still trying to run to be an MP in what they perceive to be a safer seat up there in the northeast. Well, let's hope that people have the good sense to vote for Seamus Logan, the SNP candidate, and really properly wipe the Tories out from Westminster representation, because that's what they deserve, and that's what I hope they'll get. But in terms of the general election, how you think it's going, do you think that the question of independence is coming across strongly enough in it? Because Stephen came up with a statement yesterday that, yes, this will be an independence election, that, yes, it's on the ballot paper, and yes, if we win a majority, that will be a mandate to start negotiating. What do you think?
I think I saw a poll the other day that put support at 53%. For independence. I think if people want independence, they should absolutely vote SNP. But I also think this election is going to be fought on getting the Tories out for a lot of people. And I think that's going to be that's going to be the issue, I think, in Scotland. Are people going to vote for independence, or are people going to vote to kick the Tories out? I think the message is clear from the SNP. First line, first page of the manifesto, absolutely clear. And I just hope people will heed to that and vote accordingly.
I do reckon, though, that the election campaign is definitely being shifted by the perception that Keir Starmer is quite right wing now. That doesn't go down very well in Scotland. And it doesn't really appeal to the middle of the road Scottish voter here, because we have a sort of more leftish stance. We have greater provision of public services. We have the Scottish Child Plan, which comes across very well. It plays very well on Georgia. We have things here which they want down south, like free tuition, further education. People say these are the things that would make a big difference to the cost of living, to the damage of Brexit. Where Stephen Flynn has been the only candidate to mention the damage of Brexit and stick it to Nigel Farage right in his face. So thank goodness that somebody is doing that, and it is the SNP that's doing it. Noticeably, not Labour, not the Lib Dems, and even the Greens aren't pushing that as much. But interesting as well, the Welsh nationalists have been getting a platform as well. Rina Piawth has done very well in the debates too, sticking it to Labour's record of 25 years of failure in Wales. But then Wales doesn't have the same self-government powers that Scotland already has. So that argument, Welsh independence now 37%. That's astonishing for Wales.
That's huge. That is pretty huge.
And we are still maintaining our independence majority. So if that independence majority votes with their hearts and their conscience, that should translate into SNP votes. It's the only one you can exercise it. But we can't take that for granted, because obviously the government has some issues that it's got to deal with. There's no doubt that there's a crisis still in healthcare. There's crisis in local government funding. These are all of the effects of austerity that we're having to mitigate, which can only be solved if Keir Starmer's government is pressured from the left to do more to fund those public services. So I think we're in a strong position to argue that in the election. We're the only people making that call against austerity. So I think that's definitely winning us some support. The final thing I'm talking about, though, if you don't mind, is we said a word about Gaza. That obviously outrageous attack to free the 4 hostages, which they killed 270 Palestinian civilians. That simply hasn't got enough traction during this election. People have just carried on with all the other mundane topics of, this and that budget forecast and this and that policy manifesto launch. And, these manifestos, none of them really mention what they're going to do about recognizing Palestine, stopping the genocide, stopping arms sales to Israel. Angela Rayner was questioned on that in the leaders' debate yesterday, and came up with, in my view, a very weak answer. But as Stephen pointed out, it's, where were you for 4 months? It took you 4 months before you voted for a ceasefire, which, tens of thousands of people were killed.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who's in number 10. The arms sales won't stop. the genocide won't stop. I think that's got to come from Biden, and Biden is looking increasingly doddery, I think is the only word I can use to describe him at the moment. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to stop Israel, and I don't know who can stop Israel, because neither of the UK parties who have got a chance of becoming a government have got any intentions of stopping.
Well, I think part of it is going to be how the candidates look from the independent side, in England, particularly people like Jeremy Corbyn, Faiza Shaheen, all of them. I think they'll do very well. And, Jeremy will get elected. Others may well get elected too. And I think they're going to be the protest vote around Gaza in England. But in Scotland, that's the SNP. And to some extent in England, that's the Green Party. But, I'm looking to see how many, successful left of Labour candidates get elected in England. I'd be looking at that with great keen interest, particularly as an Islingtonian. I'm quite confident, Jeremy, we haven't got 66% of the electorate in 2019. He's coming back. So the question then is, who joins it? And who are our allies in that parliament when we send SNP MPs back down there? Who are we going to be working with to try and get Palestine recognised, get the austerity ended? Labour needs an opposition, and it needs not to be Nigel Farage of the Tories. It needs to be a proper left of centre opposition. And hopefully that will still be us, up on the SNP.
Well, fingers crossed.
In the parliament.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I can't call it election at all. You can't call it.
Well, I do think it will be closer than people think. I mean, obviously, the Sunak's campaign's fallen apart because of what he did on D-Day, and he's toast. Everybody knows it, but Starmer's doing his very best to alienate as much of his core voters as possible. He's basically telling them, well, we're going to keep the two-child cap benefit. We not do anything about Gaza. He's taking those votes for granted, assuming they won't go anywhere else. But I think he's going to get a rude shock about that. But perhaps they calculated and factored that in, that they can lose all those progressive left and Muslim and black community votes, but still get enough Tory swingers to come to them to win things. That's obviously what they've calculated. They'd rather have right-wing people who vote Tory and are hostile on immigration questions to vote for them, rather than progressive democratic left people.
That would have been
a bad choice.
That would have been unthinkable in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
How far Labour have fallen, but a very poor imitation of what a Labour Party should be.
But it indicates, of course, exactly why if you want a progressive social society, you're going to have independence, because it's not coming through the Westminster system. It's broken, it's completely kaput, and the people who are proposing any remedy to it are either far-right loonies, or they are people who are going to keep things exactly the same.
Yeah.
So Westminster's not going to solve our problems. We need to have all the powers, and then we can at least start creating foundations of some area system. So that's how we solve the world's problems right there. Well, at least some of Scotland's problems right there. But
I'll try and watch more telly the week coming, so I can have more radical opinions about things. I'll start watching. It gets me angry to watch leaders' debates, so I try and avoid them, but I'll try and force myself to watch them.
It's not good for your stress or blood pressure, but
no,
basically,
no, definitely not.
As I always say in Tottenham, they would say, "Bun them, down Babylon." So that's it. Bun them. Vote SNP.